where key developments are unfolding. In Cameroon, presidential elections are set for October 12, but concerns are mounting about a divided opposition and whether the vote will be free and transparent. Meanwhile, in the DRC, tensions continue as the government boycotts peace talks convened by President Thabo Mbeki's foundation, and warnings against attempts to whitewash former President Joseph Kabila's legacy. At the same time, the UN is cautioning that escalating violence is dimming DRC's diplomatic standing. Well, to help us unpack these issues, we're now joined by geopolitical analyst and one of our regular commentators, Aaron Ngambi. Aaron, good to talk to you. A very good morning.
Morning, Peter, and good morning to our listeners this morning.
Let's start in Cameroon. What are the main dynamics, do you think, that are shaping Cameroon's presidential race as the country heads to the polls next month?
Well, some of the few dynamics there is a fragmented opposition. So there are about 11 candidates outside of the incumbent. We all know that the incumbent is 92 years old and he wants to seek his eighth term of office. But the other 11 contenders seem to be basically candidates that do not have much weight. And so they do not seem to agree on a strategy of coming together to defeat the incumbent. They've had several meetings, but all of these meetings have not produced any tangible results. So you have a fragmented opposition going against a long-term incumbent who's been in office for over 40 years. These are the dynamics at play, but we should also remember that the only opposition that could have been a threat to the incumbent, Maurice Kamto, was barred from running in this election. So the incumbent really has a free ride. He's having a field day and thinks that he'll return office next month.
The question remains, who's running Cameroon? Has the president been seen at all recently? And this election, with elections literally a few weeks away, it's remarkable that we don't see him every single day in some election spot.
No, he hasn't even been seen at all. In fact, there's a problem between Cameroon and one of the neighboring countries up north. There seem to be issues of possible jihadist insurgencies and people that are trying to cause destabilization. And of all people, guess who went to assess the situation and calm the situation down was the Minister of Finance, not the president himself, not the commander-in-chief. And so we don't know where Paul Biya is. We don't know what is happening to his health, but all we know is that he'll be a candidate in this election. Unlike, for example, in Malawi, we've seen the former president who wants to return back to power. He's 84 years old. He's been on a campaign trail, attending rallies and speaking, but not in Cameroon.
I guess on election day, it's going to be interesting to see if he actually even votes on that day. But anyway, let's maybe just as a last question, would it have mattered anyway, even if the opposition were organized?
I think that it would have sent a message. Strategically, it would have been the right thing to do to voice out the displeasure of this incumbent as a united force by the opposition and vis-a-vis representing the voice of the people. The majority would have sided with that candidate. But because they're fragmented, this gives the incumbent and his party an excuse to say these people are not serious, they're selfish, they put their interest before the country, they cannot be trusted.
So the UN is concerned about the credibility of these elections. What about the African Union and other regional bodies?
African Union is basically what Julius Malema describes as a club of old men who look out for each other's interests. The African Union has been very silent on Cameroon. We haven't heard any statement from the people in leadership at the AU. We haven't heard anything from ECOWAS and other regional bodies. So I think that it is disappointing, and I think that even the people of Cameroon were expecting there'll be more voices about what is happening in Cameroon, because at least these regional bodies should have sent election observers to Cameroon and help to prepare for a free and fair election. But they've been very quiet.
Turning to the DRC, what do you think is at the heart of the government's decision to boycott peace talks that have been organized by President Thabo Mbeki's foundation?
This issue regarding M23 and the problem in the Eastern DR Congo is an issue that I believe President Thabo Mbeki understands better than any other person, because I have heard his public lectures. I've heard him explain the historical context of this problem. And it is very true that the government in Kinshasa has said they will not attend, but not only that, they have stopped some of the opposition leaders to attend these peace talks in South Africa. We are talking about opposition political leaders whose passports were confiscated at the airport trying to go to attend these peace talks. And also, basically, government of President Tshisekedi thinks that Thabo Mbeki is more sympathetic towards Rwanda and the M23 rebels. They think that this would be a waste of time, but also they feel that Thabo Mbeki and the foundation, they're making an attempt to whitewash the legacy of Joseph Kabila and basically paint him as someone who wants to champion peace in these difficult times, when in fact they feel that it's otherwise.
Is there any basis for their inference that President Mbeki may be overly sympathetic to former President Kabila?
I've always said that Thabo Mbeki is one of the most fearless, is one of the most, I think, honest Pan-Africanists that we have in our time. But he is not without fault. He has flaws as well. I remember in 2008, when there was a disputed election in Zimbabwe between President Mugabe and Morgan Shangirai of the MDC at that time. The mediator in that impasse during that time was Thabo Mbeki. And the chair for the SADC region was the late president from Zambia, President Mwanawasa. And I recall that Mwanawasa had expressed displeasure with Thabo Mbeki being the mediator because he had accused Thabo Mbeki of siding with Robert Mugabe and ZANU-PF at the expense of the opposition MDC. So this is not the first time we think that people are accusing, or we see that people are accusing President Mbeki of taking the side. But I think he understands the problem very well. He, in fact, refers the M23 to a term called Nyamurenges, which basically these are people that are Congolese, but they speak Rwandanese, one of the Rwandanese languages. And so this is a deep-rooted issue that I think he understands. But to accuse him of taking a side, I don't know if that carries any substance in this context, but he's been accused of such things before.
I suppose this isn't a good look, and perhaps it's even sad that African efforts, we've had the East African community try, we've seen the president of Angola try, we've seen the African Union even try and put together a team to sort out the issue in the DRC, and yet it seems that the government there is more interested in solutions from Qatar and Washington.
In fact, that is a very important point that you make, Peter, because the government spokesperson says they're not interested to have any outside intervention in this conflict. But that is just really them speaking with both sides of their mouth, because on one end, we know that they're happy to go to Qatar. On the other hand, we know they're happy to go to Washington, D.C. and strike some sort of a deal with Donald Trump, but yet they turned down an offer from the Thabo Mbeki Foundation. This is very sad. I think that they should have taken advantage of this. And if they have any issues with how they suspect that the Thabo Mbeki Foundation will handle the situation, they could have aired those through diplomatic channels and be able to help President Mbeki be impartial.
Right. The UN's special representative recently said that growing violence is dimming the light of diplomacy in the DRC. What does this reveal about the state of both internal conflict and international engagement in the country, given what we've just been discussing?
Well, the violence has come back to the eastern part of the DR Congo. The M23s making headways, gaining territory, attacking people. And I think that from the latest numbers that we've seen, about 319 people have been killed as of August this year. I think from July 8th to about August 30th or 28th this year. So it shows that all the efforts to bring about peace, all the efforts to foster dialogue are actually falling on deaf ears. Now, I also understand that the spokesperson for the M23 rebels mentioned that their problem is not a problem that can be resolved through guns, but it is a problem of politics and it can be resolved through dialogue. And that's why the M23 were very happy to send a representative to South Africa and meet with the Kinshasa, the auspices of President Thabo Mbeki and his foundation. So it is unfortunate that while we are trying to figure out what avenue of talks this peace process should take, and also while we're trying to figure out, some sort of a settlement, the fighting goes on and people's lives have been lost. So the violence has returned to the region.
I mean, we've been following this story for a long, long time now, and one gets a sense that no matter which, in inverted commas, peace tables these parties go to, there doesn't seem to be a genuine desire to change what's happening in the DRC. Or am I misreading the situation?
I think that there's been genuine efforts from external players to try to resolve this conflict. And external players, I mean, the summit that we saw that was supposed to take place in Angola, the East African community, also, SADC has also had troops in the Eastern DR Congo, even though those troops have left now. All of these have been genuine efforts to try to establish a ceasefire and a settlement. The problem has always been that most of these talks, they have removed some of the key players in this conflict. Representatives from M23 are only coming to the table now. I think the only talks that they actually participated in were talks in Qatar after Paul Kagame and Felix Tshisekedi met. The subsequent talks are the ones that M23 went to. But largely above that, over and above that, we have seen that it is only the so-called Rwandan Defense Forces and the Kinshasa government that have been trying to resolve a conflict. Yet the Rwandese have been very clear to say they're not involved in this conflict and they're not behind M23s. Therefore, I think that it is the matter of physics for to figure out for what kind of a settlement can be brought about.
Is there one side, do you think, that is trying harder than the other, or are all stakeholders involved directly in the violence and the defending of the country, inverted commas, trying their best, or is one side more delinquent than the other? Do you think?
I think that there's a little bit of perhaps it's amateurish in terms of diplomacy on the part of the Kinshasa government of Felix Tshisekedi. I think that he has missed a lot of opportunities to be able to nap this in the bud and be able to exhaust this conflict and bring it to an end. It also seems to me that he has a very stiff position that he's taken. He has some interest that he's protecting this conflict, and therefore it makes him to be less compromised on some of the positions. Now, when it comes to diplomacy and politics, it's a give and take game. It seems that one side is willing to give in a little bit more than the other side, and that is a bit problematic from the get-go. And I think that the blame rests on the Felix Tshisekedi government, quickly, I want to make this point, Peter, that the government of Kinshasa is saying that Thabo Mbeki is trying to whitewash the legacy of Joseph Kabila. But honestly speaking, when Joseph Kabila ruled the Congo for 18 years, of course there were problems. Of course there were things that were unheard of. But relatively, the eastern part of the DR Congo was stable. The M23 would, have on occasions would have actually a few would cause few problems, would have few insurgencies that they would cause, but by and large, the killings were not on this level. And I think that for that specific reason, Joseph Kabila should be given credit for relatively ruling the Congo for 18 years without major problems or even a full-blown civil war.
Aaron, that's where we're going to have to leave it. Your thoughts and insights always greatly appreciated on the program. Thanks for your time, and we'll chat next week.
Thank you, Peter. Have a good day.
That's Aaron Ngambi, who's a geopolitical analyst, giving us his take on the developments that are playing out in Central Africa. Big ticket items, elections in Cameroon due next month on the 12th, and also this ongoing violence in the DRC that just doesn't seem to want to end. It's 6:30 Central